You know that feeling when someone says, "Trust me," and something inside you quietly pulls away instead? Not dramatically, not even consciously. Just a small tightening in your chest, a pause before responding, a need to keep a part of yourself hidden, even around people who seem kind. There's a certain kind of person who listens carefully to everyone, but reveals almost nothing about themselves. The kind who can spend years around others and still feel emotionally untouched by them. People often describe them as guarded, distant, hard to read. But what most people never notice is how exhausting that constant vigilance actually is. Because from the outside, it can look like independence. But internally, it often feels more like preparation. Preparation for disappointment, for betrayal, for shifts in people's behavior that arrive without warning. And over time, this creates a strange contradiction. Wanting closeness, while instinctively resisting it the moment it appears. A lot of people misunderstand this pattern. Society tends to romanticize openness. Trust is treated like a virtue, and suspicion is often framed as negativity or damage. So people who trust nobody are usually interpreted in extremes. Either they're called cold and emotionally unavailable, or they're admired as hyper-independent and impossible to manipulate. But most of the time, neither interpretation is accurate. Because this behavior usually isn't about arrogance or emotional detachment, it's about adaptation. There's more going on here than people realize. The psychology of people who trust nobody is rarely about trust itself. It's about prediction, about safety, about what the nervous system learned to expect from other human beings. Research in neuroscience has shown that the brain is constantly trying to anticipate outcomes. It wants patterns, stability, emotional consistency. And when someone experiences enough moments where connection led to pain, confusion, embarrassment, abandonment, or betrayal, the brain starts adjusting itself around that expectation, not as a conscious decision, as survival. Over time, the nervous system becomes less focused on connection and more focused on detection. It starts scanning people carefully, listening for inconsistencies, watching tone changes, reading pauses, looking for signs that something is about to shift. And the strange thing is, people who trust nobody are often incredibly perceptive. Not because they were born that way, because they had to become that way. A child who grows up in an emotionally unpredictable environment learns quickly that moods matter. Silence matters, facial expressions matter, small changes in energy matter. They learn that safety can disappear suddenly, so attention becomes a form of protection. Eventually, this awareness follows them into adulthood. They become the person who notices everything. The delayed text, the forced smile, the subtle dishonesty in someone's voice. And while other people experience relationships emotionally, they often experience relationships analytically first. Not because they enjoy distance, because closeness once felt unsafe. Sometimes this develops after betrayal instead of childhood. A relationship that ended with manipulation. Friendships built on hidden competition, being vulnerable with someone who later used that vulnerability against them. The brain remembers experiences like these more intensely than positive ones. Psychologists call this negativity bias. The nervous system gives more weight to painful social experiences because, evolutionarily, social rejection once threatened survival itself. So after enough emotional injuries, some people stop approaching trust as something natural. They approach it like risk assessment. And the difficult part is that many of them are fully aware of it. They know not everyone is dangerous. They know some people genuinely care. They know their walls can create loneliness. But awareness and nervous system conditioning are not the same thing. A person can logically understand safety while emotionally remaining prepared for danger. That's why people who trust nobody often seem calm on the outside while carrying constant internal tension. Their mind is rarely fully resting around others. Part of them stays alert even during intimacy, not visibly, quietly, and this is where people usually become judgmental. Some say these individuals are too guarded. Others say they attract isolation. Some frame trust as a simple choice, as though human beings can override years of conditioning through willpower alone. But human psychology is rarely that simple. Trusting easily is not morally superior. Distrusting easily is not morally inferior. Different nervous systems adapt differently to different experiences. Some people survive by moving toward others. Some survive by becoming careful around them. Neither response is inherently right or wrong. They're both attempts to create emotional safety, using the tools the brain learned early on. And interestingly, people who trust nobody are often deeply loyal once trust is finally established, because they do not take emotional closeness lightly. When they let someone in, it usually means that person has passed through years of observation, hesitation, testing, and internal conflict. Their trust tends to be slow, but meaningful. Still, there's a hidden cost that people rarely talk about. Hypervigilance protects against betrayal, but it also interferes with peace. Because when the brain becomes too focused on avoiding pain, it can unintentionally block experiences that require uncertainty to exist in the first place. Love, friendship, dependence, emotional intimacy. All of these involve risk. And for someone whose nervous system associates vulnerability with danger, even healthy connection can feel emotionally unfamiliar. That's the paradox. The same instinct that protects them from being hurt can also prevent them from fully feeling close to anyone. So they often live in a state of partial closeness, around people, but never entirely with them, known socially, but rarely known deeply. And yet, beneath all of this, there's usually a very human desire that never disappeared: to exhale around someone, to stop analyzing every interaction, to feel emotionally safe enough to stop preparing for loss before it even happens. People who trust nobody are often described as emotionally detached, but many of them actually feel things very intensely. They simply learned that expressing those feelings openly once came with consequences. So instead, they became self-contained, private, controlled, careful. Not broken, careful. And there's an important difference between those two things. Because when a person spends years adapting to unpredictability, their behavior starts making sense within the context of what they experienced. The walls, the hesitation, the distance, these are rarely random personality flaws. They are patterns built slowly over time by repetition, memory, and emotional survival, which means the story is usually much deeper than they have trust issues. Sometimes it's a nervous system that learned safety was temporary. Sometimes it's a mind that became exhausted from disappointment. Sometimes it's simply someone who had to become emotionally self-reliant too early in life. And despite how isolating this can feel, there's also a quiet strength inside it. People who trust nobody often become highly resilient, observant, emotionally intelligent in ways that are difficult to teach. They tend to understand human behavior deeply because they spent so much of their life studying it for protection. The goal was never superiority, just safety, and maybe that's the part most people never see. Behind the guardedness is usually someone who once wanted connection very naturally, until experience taught them to approach it carefully. Not because they were incapable of love, because their nervous system learned caution before safety. And when you understand that, the behavior stops looking cold. It starts looking human. If this feeling felt familiar somehow, there are other patterns like this that people carry quietly without realizing where they came from. The mind adapts in ways most people never notice until someone finally puts language to it.